Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ScaleForEtail webinar. I'm delighted to welcome Jeff Schick to join us today from Rafelson Schick. We're just doing a little bit of moving around the camera because Jeff's in clearly a very sunny, summery place, which makes me very jealous given the weather outside here. And so he's got a problem with the backlighting, but hopefully it's not. Hopefully you can still see him and we can still hear him fine. So hello to everybody. Unfortunately, Shelley can't make it today, so you've just got me running things. Shelley's unfortunately not too well, so she's missing this session. So just as intro, hopefully you know a little bit about ScaleForEtail and what we do. We organize events for Amazon and e-commerce sellers. Unfortunately, this year we've not been able to do many live events, and it looks like we're not going to do anything till 2021 now. So I'm missing you all, and I hope we can see you again sometime soon. I just put a message in the chat, say hello, let us know that you're live and kicking. If you're a regular, let us know you're regular. If you're new, just put a message saying that you are new to ScaleForEtail. Hello, welcome back, Jeff.
I'm back. Okay, I had to switch to Firefox and then wait for it to do all the trust stuff again. So
okay.
The joys of being of having a law firm is that we have to actually have all these security settings, and so it went nuts when I was trying to switch browsers on it. So sorry about that.
It's fine. I'm glad we got you back, and everyone doesn't have to put up with my monologuing anymore.
Hey, I was able to hear it. I just couldn't contribute to it. So
I hope that was all fine. Okay, right. We shall get into the presentation. I'm going to run the presentation from here, and just let me know when you want me to change the slides.
Perfect.
All right, Jeff.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you guys about e-commerce law in the United States. So what we're going to talk about is a brief overview of some of the basics. So just a little bit about tax, a little bit about intellectual property, and then get into the really fun stuff, which is the advanced regulations. So go into regulatory, so California, which is where I'm at right now, and these crazy toxic law warning laws, and then also just other gotcha regulations to watch out for that a lot of people don't know exist, but that can affect you in the United States, and also most of them are mirrored off the UK anyways, so you don't want to get caught on either country. So without further ado, I guess we'll get the next slide if that works. So that's the agenda. And then the last slide is all about preventing suspension, since we're right before Q4 and obviously nobody wants to get suspended. So that's a little bonus slide I added in there for you guys. So if we go next, so in the United States, intellectual property, there's three major categories. It's copyrights, trademarks, and patents. When it comes to intellectual property, I think that a lot of sellers sometimes forget is that it is territorial, meaning that if you've got a UK trademark or a UK copyright or maybe an EU patent, those are only valid within those regions. So they're not valid within the United States. So you have to actually have a United States copyright, which would be registered with the Library of Congress. You can register that yourself, and then you just submit the work by mail to the Library of Congress. They have an address in Washington, D.C. that you can ship it to. When it comes to trademarks, you register those with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And you can actually take advantage of the Madrid Protocol because the United States is a signatory and the UK is a signatory. So a really inexpensive way to get trans-border trademark protection is to use the Madrid Protocol and go across from the UK all the way you can get it into China and Canada and all the marketplaces in one application. So something definitely to look into.
Jeff, and then you have to do when you first file the trademark, or can you do it later and kind of add it on to the trademark?
You can add it on to the trademark. Each trademark office is a little bit different, so I'm not completely certain on how the UK trademark office handles it, but at least in the United States, we're able to add it on later. So. Okay. There are time deadlines though to watch out for, so that's just the only caveat to be aware of. And then patents, those are definitely territorial. We've got utility patents and design patents here in the Americas. So utility patents, those are covering non-obvious processes, machines, and devices. So like, for instance, medication could be patented. The function of a mixing utensil could be patented. Whereas design patents really cover, the aesthetic look of something. So you can have patents on the the design of, like if you had a brush that had a certain prong design, you could have a design patent on that for the looks, and then a utility patent if you could prove that the prongs somehow improve the function of the brush. So like a toothbrush is a good example of something that, like a Sonicare toothbrush, is going to have utility and design patents covering both aspects of it. I think, and then on the next slide, let's see what we got. So copyrights, an in-depth thing of copyrights is, copyrights can be logos. That's probably the most common copyright that people think of, is logos, photographs, any sort of artwork. But your product images can be copywritten, so you can get copyright protection for those with the Library of Congress. Your product detail page, you can actually get on the product description and bullet points. You can get copyright protection, so you can register your entire product detail page with the Library of Congress. That's really helpful if you're in a competitive niche where it's likely that someone is going to steal your content and try to market off your success. And so making sure that you have copyrights on your detail page, your bullet points, your text, that's all really important. If you're selling like a custom artwork piece, or something that you've designed yourself, that is visually artistic, you definitely would want to get copyrights on that as well. So copyrights are extremely cheap. They're about $50 to $65 to apply for a standard speed copyright. And then you can get a priority copyright if somebody's ripping off your products on Amazon and you want to be able to hold them accountable. You can get those, and they issue them in 5 days for an $800 upcharge. So just something to be aware of, that is an option. And the DMCA really covers copyrights. So if you find that somebody is stealing your content on Amazon, the cool thing about the DMCA is that there's a prescribed DMCA takedown notice form that you can fill out and send it to Amazon, and they have to take action. So it's a really effective tool to take down people that have stolen your intellectual property. On the same token, the DMCA makes it really easy for people to take down your content if you've stolen their intellectual property. So the do not list is going to be more obvious to the sellers that have been selling for a long time, but probably not quite as obvious to brand new sellers. So I like to go over it. For instance, don't copy and paste text from Alibaba. If your Chinese manufacturer gives you a spec sheet and says, feel free to take whatever you want from this, that doesn't mean that you can just copy and paste it, because sometimes they didn't make it themselves. They might have just gotten it from one of your competitors, and now they're distributing infringing content, and you're copying and pasting the infringing content. Similarly, don't use Alibaba images or images from other sellers that might, even if they're selling the exact same item, like, I've got this bottle of soda here, and I could go into the store and buy more bottles of the soda, but it doesn't mean that, I should just go and find a picture of Dr. Pepper on the website, because that would be infringing. So just because you're selling the exact same item doesn't mean you can take the photo, especially if you're doing any sort of online arbitrage or wholesale arbitrage. You want to have those photos being taken yourself. Another big gotcha.
Do you have any concept of, I guess it's something like fair use, that if you're selling Dr. Pepper, can you use some kind of photography of that?
I could take a photo, with my iPhone of the Dr. Pepper right now, and that would be totally fine. That's fair use. But I can't go to the Dr. Pepper website and save one of their photos and then put it on an Amazon page.
Sure.
We've been having a lot of sellers we're helping right now where they had no idea that they're joining existing listings, that somebody had done that, where they went to the store, or they went to the website and just scraped the images, and then a lot of manufacturers are now striking back, especially if they don't want their products on Amazon. And then one thing to think about, a lot of people don't realize this, but memes and still photos of movies and song clips, they're really fun to share on Facebook, but they're not fun to share on Amazon, and or even to a business Facebook page, for instance. You actually would not want to ever save something that you didn't create yourself. So imagine you find like a really funny meme, and it's in like a group that you see. You would not want to download that image and then upload it to another page on behalf of your business, because there actually is software out there now that does these automated DMCA takedowns, and you can actually lose your whole Facebook account. Amazon will take down the content as soon as they're notified. And then, so you might have just one little tiny image that might be 100 by 100 pixels in your A+ content. And if it's infringing, they're going to take down the entire listing, and you're going to have to negotiate with the meme owner to get your listing back. So definitely not a place you want to be in when Q4 is coming. And then just one other thing, just don't assume that if you have a UK copyright that it works in the United States, because unfortunately they are country specific. So it's definitely evidence of publication. So you'll want to list it on your copyright application when it asks if you have any other foreign publications and foreign registrations. You definitely want to list it, but you have to still register and pay the $50 or $65 in the United States. So
do you have to go through a registration process to have any copyright ownership of what you've created, or do you have any automatic intrinsic copyright having just created and published something?
So you have a common law copyright the moment you write something. So like we have a common law copyright right now on this presentation we're making here. But if we wanted to protect it and be able to do like, for instance, DMCA takedowns, like if somebody in the group is recording this right now and puts it on YouTube, we would have to go and register it with the Library of Congress in order to then issue a DMCA takedown notice.
Okay.
Technically Amazon is supposed to accept copyright claims even if you don't have a Library of Congress registration number, but it's basically a safe harbor to have that registration, because then someone can't come back and say that you made a false claim against them on Amazon.
Okay, great. And if you copyright your listing page, does that help you to get it changed back if somebody else changes some detail of the page, or is it only prevent people copying the page as is?
It only prevents really people copying elements of the page and putting it. So like, but it is a powerful tool, because you might have a competitor that takes one of your bullet points, and if you've copywritten the entire page, now you can take down their entire detail page for copying one bullet point. So that is, we have seen people do that. It's definitely something to consider.
Okay.
And it does help protect you if somebody, because we have seen bogus copyright claims. On the same token, we see sometimes out of the 163.com email addresses or the QQ.com email addresses that they make false copyright claims and then take down into competitors' listings. So the copyright registration is prima facie evidence that what they are saying is false.
Okay.
So that's the intro to copyrights. Just like copyrights, trademarks are geographic. For instance, the United Kingdom trademark would cover the UK only. Now that Brexit is happening, I'm not sure how the EU trademark is going to work, but I would imagine that it's not going to cover the United Kingdom any longer. So obviously, y'all would want to talk to a solicitor there to find out specifically how that's going to play out. Design marks really protect the look of a trademark, although you can have a trademark that protects both the words and the design. So trademarks can be pretty fun. They can also get really expensive and really complicated very quickly too, as far as filing. But the one thing in the United States to watch out for is the Trademark Dilution Revision Act, TDRA for short. It's what protects famous marks. So in the United States, we have this whole body of law designed to keep famous marks protected. And so anything that a common consumer, where you mention the word, like for instance, you mentioned Amazon or Apple or Louis Vuitton, the common consumer is going to know what that means. Those would be considered famous marks. And so that means they get a higher level of protection. So you can't go in and make a product that's called, Glamazon, because Amazon is famous. Whereas if it was not famous, you probably could get away with that. So things to watch out for with those famous marks, just like you can't make a private label computer company or a computer cable company. You can't call it, Orange, because they'd say that that's confusingly similar to Apple, and that you're trying to trade off the famous goodwill. So
is that conceptual closeness of Orange and Apple also relevant, not just the closeness of the name, like Amazon?
It's the idea of like a fruit being related to a computer is kind of where I was going with that. But it just goes to show. I mean, there's even like if you were to try to, for instance, one thing that people don't often realize is that the Apple has a trademark on the lid of the computer with the logo that glows. So if you were to get like a circle on a computer lid and have it start glowing, you'd probably face a trademark claim from Apple saying that you're confusingly similar, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with their little Apple logo that glows. So it's so that's the famous trademarks. The TDRA is a really interesting little area of law to watch out for, just especially when people are making products that are that might be trading using some of the goodwill of like a big famous competitor. So just to watch out for it.
Okay.
Character marks offer the most protection if it's available for your product, and so it's something to, if you have a design mark and you're able to get a character mark, we always recommend people to go with the character mark instead of a design mark, or both if you can afford it, just because it's the strongest protection to have as much IP as possible when dealing with Amazon. So let's see, and then next slide I think is patents. So I know I kind of touched on this earlier. You know, design patents and utility patents are the two types of patents. Design patents cover, you know, the looks of how something looks. So wraparound sunglasses for playing racquetball, that was one of Paul's examples that he gave. I don't play racquetball, so but I know what he's talking about. And then utility patents are where that's where you start talking about, you know, manufacturing, composition of matter, you know, improvements. So an example that I give for utility patents that people don't think of is like the idea that you can use cyclosporin drops in your eye for dry eye, and that is called Restasis now on the marketplace. That's an example of something that's patent covered by a utility patent. So, you know, medications can be utility patented. You know, processes. I think the next slide, I believe, I have my. I don't have it in anymore. I took it out last night because I didn't want to get too far down the patent bandwagon. But there's a famous bottle called a blender bottle that's you know, you'll see it. I know they have it in the UK, and I know that it's really popular here. But the blender bottle is a perfect example of something that's covered by design patents, utility patents, trademarks, and copyrights, all in one product design. So, and it's also something that whenever you walk around a trade show in China, you'll see like 100 different vendors telling you that they can sell you blender bottles with your company's name on it. And the reality is that they will sell you a pallet of blender bottles that will end up in a landfill, because they're not going to end up, because blender bottle is so widely counterfeited and so widely infringed upon that CBP pretty much confiscates anything that resembles a blender bottle as soon as it crosses the border.
CBP is Customs Border Patrol, yeah?
You are correct. Yeah, sorry. I should. I use these acronyms all the time in our practice. I always forget that you have to explain. Have to tell people. Yeah, because this the United States Customs and Border Protection is what CBP is, and they're responsible for enforcing trademarks and patent rights at the border. So.
And as a seller, if you're talking to suppliers and they say yes, we can provide this, what is the best way for you to check that actually there's no patent covering that product that will actually prevent you in reality from selling it in the US?
Well, one really simple way, I mean, the most surefire way is, of course, to talk to a patent attorney, and those are specialized attorneys. Like, I'm not a patent attorney, but you know, we work with some, and so the best way is to talk with a patent attorney if you're really concerned. But a quick and easy way is if you see it, like for instance, like if I'm at the store, I'm at, you know, the sporting goods store, and I see a blender bottle, and I have this great idea, like, oh, I'm going to make my own version of this. Well, if you turn over a blender bottle and you look at the bottom, it'll say protected by patents, and it'll usually have a patent number, or like in blender bottles case, they've got so many that it says protected by patents and other intellectual property. Visit blenderbottle.com/IP to learn more. So like most products will have it printed on the packaging or the product itself, either patent pending or patent protected. So that's a really easy way. If you see that word at all, you know, put the brakes on and figure out what's covered.
So practically it's about researching the existing products in that space, maybe buying some of them, checking their websites, their products for patent notices.
Absolutely. And even, you know, that hits a really good point, you know, for product research. If you're not buying your competitors' products, you know, you can learn so much by buying your competitor's product before you start sourcing. So it really is, you know, it's really part of that due diligence checklist. And by buying your competitor's product, you can see how it's packaged, you can see what works, what doesn't work, so that you can make yours better. Because if you're not doing that sort of product research, then your product, it's going to be really hard to differentiate yourself on Amazon and get those better reviews. So, you know, it can go both ways for being beneficial for business and legal compliance purposes.
Yep.
So, next slide. So I'm gonna touch really briefly on this, although I'll say Paul Rafelson is the person you want to talk to if you want specific information to your business when it comes to whether or not to form a U.S. company. There are U.S. and U.K. tax treaty benefits. You can read that, the agreements in English. You just Google U.K. and U.S. tax treaty, and you can pull it up. Y'all on our Google, it pulls up the IRS. On y'all's Google, it'll probably pull up HMRC, and you'll get to read all about it. But it'll tell you what the benefits are for compliance. The one thing you have to watch out for if you end up going the route of forming a U.S. company is most people will file an LLC, and that's fine. You just need to make sure you file it in a state that's optimized for tax benefits, like Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming. And then you also need to file the treaty benefit forms to elect treaty status, because if you don't file that form, the penalty is $10,000, even if you make no sales. So you just, and I think it can even go up if they find that the failure to file was willful. They'll try to tack on like an extra $15,000 to make it a $25,000 penalty. So yeah, and some sellers will have said to me before, they'll go, oh, well, I'm not in the US, so I don't really have to worry. What's the IRS going to do? What's the worst they can do? Well, the worst they can do is they'll just go over to Amazon and they'll put a lien on your account and basically seize all of your money and inventory. So that's the worst that they'll do, which can be quite substantial for some sellers to be battling over.
Yes.
So definitely want to talk to Paul Rafelson, get information specific to your business, especially because y'all are running, trans-border international companies. But you know, on the same token, if you have substantial assets in the United Kingdom, you definitely don't want to be running as a sole proprietor, sole trader in the United States, because we do have strict products defects liability law, which I'll talk about later in the presentation, that could put your personal assets in the UK at risk, because unfortunately, judgments from a California court are often really absurd. Like, you might see somebody spill coffee on themselves and get a $2 million verdict from a Los Angeles County court. And not only can they enforce that judgment against your Amazon business, inventory and funds, but they can actually go across the pond and enforce it in the UK. So just want to watch out for that. So it is 20% of Amazon sellers' sales usually go to the state of California, and the state of California is #1 in the country for frivolous litigation. So it's just something to watch out for.
Is there some form of insurance or something that people can take out to protect them against claims like that?
Definitely. So Amazon does require that sellers have $1 million of general liability insurance. They don't require that you have products liability insurance, though. So that's a really important distinction to watch out for. Products liability insurance almost always includes GL, which is general liability. GL does not include product liability. So just to watch out for that distinction and make sure that you have a products liability policy if you're selling private label goods. If you're only doing online arbitrage, you don't have to worry about the product liability portion, but you do still need general liability, because general liability is what helps you if a product that you sell that's made by somebody else hurts somebody, or just, GL. So GL also it covers the weird situations that pop up. There was a seller that he sold a product. Amazon shipped it in a cardboard box, set it on the buyer's doorstep, and then the buyer was walking out to get the mail and tripped over the box. They sued the seller. They sued Amazon. They sued UPS. They said the box was not obvious. It should have been placed on the shelf or something, some silly thing, and a California court allowed the case to continue. And so that's where general liability stepped in. Now, if the product inside the box had hurt somebody because it was a private label product, then that's where product liability would have happened, would have covered them. Okay. So insurance, not only is it required by Amazon, but it's incredibly cheap. So it's definitely worth making sure you get it. So that's it for this slide. Things to think about whether you need a U.S. company to do business on Amazon. Luckily, because the way our countries are so intertwined, the UK and the US, you don't actually have to have a US company to do business on Amazon if you don't want to. However, if you don't have it, you don't have any of those liability protections. So you don't have the ability for limited liability that you would have if you had a US limited liability company. It's incredibly difficult to get insurance in the United States if you don't have a US company. So most insurance companies in the US want to see a US company. So in order to get coverage, Paul had it on here. He said, tell people that if they're holding intellectual property, they may or may not want that to be in a US company. It depends on their tax benefits situation. Sometimes it's more advantageous to have intellectual property owned by a Luxembourg company or an Irish company or a UK limited company that's separate from your main limited company, just because the tax rates are lower. But it just depends on the situation. So some sellers say, oh, never mind, we still want, we want to take advantage of some other aspect of US law, and so then they'll get a US limited liability company that just holds intellectual property. So that's a cool thing to talk to Paul about.
Okay, those IP considerations, are they because the IP has intangible value, or because or the consideration for when you might sell the company that you just want that value to be in a tax efficient place?
So both. So there's the tax benefits that you get from having intellectual property. So you can structure the deals pretty cool, like in pretty cool ways. Like for instance, you could have a royalty agreement that sends your intellectual property royalties overseas to a tax advantage jurisdiction like the Cayman Islands, and then you pay no tax on the royalties. There's also legal considerations. So when you split the IP from the business, if your business were to get sued for, selling a defective product, for instance, your IP holding company would most likely be able to shield itself so that it still maintains its value if you wanted to sell that IP by itself without the going concern of the business. So just some cool ways you can structure things. So sales tax in the United States, this used to be a really hot topic in 2018 when I first met Paul, because the state of California was mailing out letters literally to Amazon sellers around the world. They were receiving these demand letters saying that you owe us money and you need to register to collect sales tax. That all changed on October 1st of 2019 because Amazon started collecting the sales tax in California. And once Amazon started collecting in California, pretty much all of the other states started dropping and becoming what we call marketplace facilitator states. So a marketplace facilitator means that Amazon collects and remits the sales tax on your company's behalf. It means it also gives you the benefit that you don't have to register for sales tax compliance in those states because Amazon's taking care of it for you. Sales tax is very different than VAT. So value-added tax is added within the price. So you buy something for $10 and $2 of it, or 10 pounds and 2 pounds of it is VAT, and 8 pounds is going to the company. In the US, you would purchase something for $10 and then, usually it's about the average sales tax around 8%. So then you'd have 80 cents of sales tax added on to $10. 8% doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it is when you get an invoice from a state for tax that you didn't collect, and there's penalties and interest added onto it. So it is something to watch out for. The only state that's not marketplace facilitator at this time that people even care about is Florida. And that's probably going to change because with coronavirus, our economy's been decimated so much that I don't think they're going to be able to continue not collecting sales tax from Amazon sales. But
the current position of sales tax, I'm not selling American myself. The current position of sales tax is that you don't need to register in states where Amazon's collecting and filing on your behalf.
In most cases, that's the general advice. It depends. It could be different. If for instance, there's different considerations that would change that. Like if you run a Shopify or a big commerce store, you're responsible for collecting and remitting for those sales. So if you have if you've got actually, sorry, I was going to say, hey, Will, can you send me that contact too? I've got a couple of UK people asking that as well. I just saw that in the chat window. so that if you have a Shopify store and say you're doing like $1 million a year on Shopify, then that conversation is going to change because you probably do have a sales tax obligation that's not negligible. But if you have a Shopify store that does $10,000 a year in sales, they're never going to come after you for it because the most they could collect is like $800. The cost of collection is too high. So
it's not that there's an official minimum threshold. It's just that it's not worth them bothering if the amount's small.
Correct.
Because in Europe, you have a threshold, and below that level, you don't have to register.
The threshold in most states is $100,000 or 100 transactions within the state.
They're very different. $100,000, 100 transactions.
Correct. So it's an either or. But then it's interesting because, like, for instance, California, they say that that's based on an entity. So if you set up a separate LLC that owns your Shopify business from the one that runs your Amazon business, well, now you've effectively split the entities and you get to start the clock all over again. So it's quite an interesting regime. But as Paul said, it made me put in here, it says, this does not mean you should or should not register. You must consider the risks and costs of both actions. Another thing to think about with registration, though, is that it's not just as simple as just submitting an application to, like, for instance, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration and saying, hey, I want to collect sales tax for you, because they'll likely come back and say, well, we also need your foreign registration, and you're going to have to pay $1,700 a year in minimum annual tax for the privilege of having an LLC and that's registered in California. They've got all these other things to think about. So that's
what put a lot of students off registering for sales tax a couple of years ago, because sales tax is fine, it's just extra money we take and send, but all the other taxes they try and hit you with have to pay.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's interesting because, like, one of my clients that I worked with on Friday, she's a small business owner in California that sells on Amazon, and she she wanted to get an LLC to hide her name because Amazon in the US is now doing what Europe has been doing for several years. We're starting on the 1st of September, they're now showing the seller's name and home address if you don't have a business set up with a business address. So she, of course, didn't want her name and home address being shown, and so we set up a LLC for her. But of course, with her being in Sacramento, the downside of that is that now she's going to have to pay so California has an interesting income tax for LLCs that's based on revenue. So $0 to $250,000 a year in revenue is a $900 minimum annual tax, and then there's an $800 a year renewal fee just for the privilege of having an LLC. So that's $1,700 just wiped off her bottom line. But I mean, she had to do it because she didn't want her name being shown. Yeah. So, Christine, you probably should talk to a tax attorney like Paul, because I saw that you were advised to register in 8 states. So a lot of times the people that will advise you to register in 8 states, if they're not a tax attorney, they're probably a tax guru, which means they're like an Amazon guru, where, like, there's one guy here in Arizona that calls himself, I'm not going to say what his name is, but it starts with tax, and has this fancy website about how he's been doing tax for many years. And it's interesting because when you ask him to quantify many, he says more than 2, but less than 3. And and so it's and yet that he has now become a sales tax expert, and that is because in the United States there's no license required to call yourself a tax expert. As long as you don't call yourself a lawyer or a certified public accountant, anybody can become a tax expert in the United States. In fact, it's so popular that law students, I became a registered tax person when I was in law school, because it was part of our pro bono that we would give back by helping lower income people file tax returns. So it literally, and I say this sincerely, the course took 1 hour to become a registered tax professional with the IRS. And now I'm suddenly licensed in all 50 states to prepare tax returns and give tax advice. So be careful with who you talk to, because some people, like the guy in Arizona, he makes his money by registering all these people in all these states without knowing the tax consequences. So it's so that's sales tax in a nutshell. So dangerous chemicals. This is where the presentation starts to get really fun. So as Paul actually he found this, and so so this is actually from the Wall Street Journal. This is back in 2019. It said the Amazon listing said the set, this was a children's play set, was made of high quality, non-toxic material, safe and reliable for little children. Claimed that it had approval from the FDA. The Wall Street Journal they literally took the product and they sent it to a lab just to see what would happen, and that it had 4 times the allowed federal lead level for children's products, which means it's probably like 100 times whatever was allowed in California. So that is definitely what you want to not have happen to you. I would imagine this seller will never sell on Amazon again. They probably were taken off within hours of this article publishing. Amazon gets really tough when it comes to safety, and they expect that you are going to do safety testing before you sell a product. So a lot of times sellers come to us and their product's been suspended and they're saying, oh, Amazon's requiring, for instance, like if it's a cosmetic, oh, Amazon's requiring an HRIPT test. And now that's going to take 3 weeks and I can't believe it. And this is horrible. And I'm like, but you've been selling this product for 3 years now. Yeah, but why would I ever need this for this situation? This is why you need this. So it's the time to do safety testing is before you get in trouble with Amazon, not afterwards. And definitely before you get featured in the Wall Street Journal or a letter from a law firm. So there are actually lawyers, we're kind of in an interesting era right now because with coronavirus, some lawyers haven't been hit as hard yet because there's still a decent amount of activity going on and such on the commercial side of things. But on the personal side of things, those lawyers are starting to get increasingly more vulturous because your typical slip and fall and workman's comp and car accident cases are not happening at the same volume because people are not driving as much. They're not in stores, so they're not slipping as much, and they're not at work, so they're not getting injured on the job as much. So those lawyers are all going to have to reinvent themselves or else they're going to have no work. And so the most obvious choice of reinvention is that they're probably going to start buying products on Amazon and bringing troll cases for dangerous products or unsafe products. So it's really interesting, and I'll tell you when we get to Prop 65, I'll tell you guys a story about my stepbrother, who's an attorney that defends companies against Prop 65. He defends 9-figure companies in most cases. He's got a really interesting story that I'll tell you guys about. So,
okay.
See what's the next. The next slide is
Prop
65. So, Prop 65.
It's a way to keep lawyers in business, right? Because you got the bounty hunters on one side and the defenders on the other.
It is, but it really is. It's a weird little economy, I should say. So Prop 65 is really interesting. It's California's toxic warning law. Basically says that anything that contains a product that can harm somebody needs a Prop 65 warning label. So if it causes birth defects or cancer, it needs to have that warning label. There's a whole list. I want to say the last time I checked it was 120 pages long of known chemicals that cause cancer or birth defects. So for instance, when you go into a grocery store, there's a big plaque that says products sold in this store may contain chemicals known to the state of California. As soon as you get off the jetway at LAX, there's a plaque that says, warning, this airport is cleaned with chemicals that are known to the state of California. Like, you literally cannot walk into a place of public establishment here without seeing a Prop 65 warning sign. And so it's just kind of a joke because they literally, you don't have to worry about, businesses may be going out of business. For Prop 65 warning sign manufacturers always have jobs because if you don't have it, you're going to be sued. So there's no label required if it doesn't contain the chemicals on the website, but it sometimes can behoove you to have it as prevention. Now, if you have less than 10 employees worldwide, you are exempt, and that's an important distinction. It's not based on California employees, it's based on worldwide employees. So if you have less than 10 employees, you're exempt from Prop 65. However, what we're seeing more and more of is that Amazon is often getting named in these suits. And so the Amazon will settle those lawsuits, and then they'll just come up to you. And one of the sections of the business solutions agreement, I believe it's section 7, says that you agree to indemnify Amazon from all losses that they incur. And so when they show you a bill for a settlement that they incurred to settle a Prop 65 suit, they're just going to debit it from your account or come after you for it. Now, here's a really easy way to fix it. If you know that your product does fall onto the P65 list, which you would find because you had a safety test done before you started selling the product, so see that safety test coming in handy there, you would just simply go onto Amazon and you would type in Prop 65 in the search bar of Seller Central, and it's going to come up with a whole instruction guide of how to add a Prop 65 warning label to your product detail page, so that when people log on from California, they are given this little, yellow triangle or red triangle or whatever the type of chemical that dictates what type of symbol shows up, but it's going to show it on the product detail page that there's a warning. And it only shows to buyers in California. This is something I learned a couple of years ago working with sellers, because I had one seller that I kept telling, no, it's not there. And then I realized, because I was in Florida, it was not there. But when you logged in from a VPN and selected California, it was there. So it's an interesting thing. You can drive yourself crazy over it, because it says that changes have been submitted and we consider everything in 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes later you go back and it's not there on the detail page, but it's actually there where it needs to be.
If it works and you put in a California delivery address, like a zip code?
I'm not sure if that would work or not.
Okay.
But I know the VPN does. So if you just get like ExpressVPN and choose Los Angeles for your VPN's location, then it'll work.
Okay. Is there, other than Prop 65, is there somewhere you can go to see what kind of tests you need to do for a given product or a given material?
Yeah, so a lot of laboratory companies, like for instance, Modern Testing Services out of Massachusetts, not Paul Rafelson, but there's another guy named Paul. He runs that lab, and he's very, very knowledgeable on what's needed. And in fact, he's helped several of my clients when they've gotten suspended on Amazon, where Amazon won't tell them what safety tests need to be done, and he'll go to them and he'll say, oh, this, and this is what needs to be done. So Tom, that's a great question. And absolutely, I'd say even if you have one employee, if it could be an issue where it's got a dangerous chemical that's on that Prop 65 list, I would definitely I'd definitely put it on Amazon, and I'd consider putting the packaging on, or the warning on the product packaging. It's often really cheap to add these labels, and if it costs you an extra 1 cent per piece to put a Prop 65 warning label on it, it's going to be a lot cheaper than hiring an attorney. We have one seller right now. They're under 10 employees, no Prop 65 issue, other than the fact that they've been hit with a 60-day notice that they're going to be sued, and it still costs them a lot more for us to send a letter and be going back and forth with this troll lawyer, proving to him that this product is not, or that they're not covered by Prop 65, than if he would have just put the Prop 65 warning on there in the first place.
And it's almost, I think, the position where basically everybody should activate this listing, right? Because I don't know, maybe Amazon will put it in a box and the sticky tape on the box may be Prop 65 or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
So you may as well just put it on for everything. But that's it's ludicrous, because everyone comes blind to it, because every single thing has this warning in the end.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you walk it through the grocery store and you just see all these little Prop 65s. If you go down the cosmetics aisle, for instance, every product has a Prop 65 warning on it. So you just at some point it's just over warning. You just are like, oh, whatever. It's I'm still going to buy it. I still need deodorant, but I guess it causes cancer.
What was the name of the testing company you mentioned again?
Modern Testing Services. They go by MTS, Modern Testing Services in Massachusetts. Tony, should electronics be classified as Prop 65 in general? I'd say if they contain one of the listed chemicals. So the issue with Amazon with P65 is that they had a revision to P65 recently, which now makes it that you actually have to specify what causes cancer. So this product contains, so I guess this picture that I have here where it says this product contains chemicals known to the state of California, that's the old style of label. The new one now says this product contains, it actually has to name the chemical. So this product may contain, polybutylene, which is known to the state of California to cause cancer. So that's where you got to, the safety testing comes in to know what your prohibited ingredient is. And
okay, so it's no longer enough to put a generic warning. You have to put a specific warning based on the okay.
Correct.
Okay, what I said 5 minutes ago, everyone can ignore that because it's no longer relevant.
So test your product independently. Don't rely on your manufacturer. So a lot of manufacturers are there to make a sale. They figured out that they can get forged safety testing because most sellers don't actually scan the QR codes at the top of a test report to see if it scans it back as valid, but Amazon does. So don't rely on that documentation from manufacturer. Get your own test result, and never forge them because Amazon has these wonderful things. One, they can scan the QR code. So like SGS in China, they put QR codes on everything. And if you scan the QR code, it'll tell you if it's fake. For like MTS, theirs don't have a QR code, but they have a phone number. And all you do is pick up a phone. It's really not hard. And so Amazon catches it all the time. And so what happens when you have a forged safety test is that you go from being in a suspended product to a banned Amazon seller account. So it's just something to watch out for. Yeah, Tony, you're correct. We're not talking about just edibles and used on skin. Pre-65 can cover any type of product. It can be toys, it can be books. I mean, you name it, you can find ways that P65 covers it. So all right, that's the first slide on Prop 65. There's more. This is my little one. When I was talking to a seller once, and they're like, "But my manufacturer said my product was safe and legal to sell in the USA. Why is Amazon targeting me?" And then another one I was talking to once. They said, "My manufacturer said I don't have to worry about Prop 65." Well, I have this little meme here, which yes, I did steal the meme, so luckily this isn't being published. But it's keep calm and know that I'm not your friend. Manufacturers are there to make money. And as much as you want to believe that they're there with your best interest in mind, sometimes there's not. Sometimes those interests diverge. And so you always want to have your own safety testing so that you know what you're dealing with, because you don't want to find out that you were wrong on these types of issues.
Do you have any ballpark figure of how much testing costs for products? Or
yeah, so here's the cool thing. If you get testing done when you don't need it, so like you call Paul over at MTS and you say, "Hey, Paul, I need safety testing." It's probably going to be $300 to $500 depending on what you're selling. It could be more if it's a more complex issue. If you call Paul and you say, "Hey, Paul, my Amazon listing is suspended. I need your priority testing and I need it tomorrow," then it's going to be like $3,000 to $5,000. So you save a lot of money getting it done at the front end, and you save yourself a lot of legal risk and suspension risk with Amazon too. So, and I think I have one more slide about Prop 65. Well, I don't know what happened to it, but I had one more slide about Prop 65. But I'll go ahead and give you guys the story now about the case that my stepbrother recently handled. So, like I said, he used to be here in Los Angeles and handles a lot of product liability cases and P65 cases on behalf of insurance companies that so he works for like Hartford and CNA and Travelers, all the big commercial companies, Allianz. And they had a case where this lawyer they figured it out. It was a really interesting case. He basically had set up a shop. The lawyer was based in Georgia, and he would purchase the products and have them delivered to a PO box in San Diego, and then the UPS store box in San Diego. And then the UPS store would repackage them, all these products, once a week and ship them to his lab in Tennessee. And so it just goes to, and then this guy would get things tested. Now, the reason my stepbrother got involved is because the lawyer who was this shitty lawyer that was suing Amazon sellers for Prop 65 violations lost one of his cases because they found out that the lab in Tennessee was not a Prop 65 certified lab. And so the lawyer then started suing the lab in Tennessee, saying that they should have had a warning label that their test results wouldn't be accepted in California. And so it comes full circle here, how all this stuff works. And so my stepbrother was defending the lab, and then they went but they, by defending them, is how they uncovered this whole fraud scheme ring, because initially the lawyer didn't disclose that it was just a UPS store box in San Diego. He was making it out as if he was in San Diego, and then it all came full circle and exposed this weird complex ring of how lawyers will just buy products, have them shipped to California so that they're covered by Prop 65, sent to a lab. And where he made the mistake is that the lab was not certified. If he had sent it to a certified lab, this is totally legal. And that's the sad thing about it, is that where this went wrong was that he sent it to a lab that wasn't certified. And then they bring these cases and just try to settle them. And their goal usually is to obtain $10,000 to $30,000 off each case, and then move on to the next small business victim. Yeah. So,
who has the liability? You've got the question there from Tom. So if there's a prepackaged product sold by a reseller on Amazon, who's liable? All three of the people, or just one of them?
Yeah, so you could have all 5 of those sellers be liable. You could have Amazon be liable, and you could have the brand be liable if they really wanted to go after people. But most big brands are going to have Prop 65 warnings on the Amazon listing. The only exception to that to watch out for is like the Walmart brands, or any of the brands of companies that compete with Amazon that don't create their own listings. So like 𝗱𝐸 products, or the Walmart private label. Great Value is also a private label, and then I think Sam's Choice is private label by Walmart as well. Those are all examples of products where the detail pages are most likely made by sellers, and they're probably not going to have a Prop 65 label or warning on the listing, even though it'd be legally required. So you just want to make sure that you check those aspects when you're selling the product. So if you order, for instance, one of the ways you could see it is like if you're buying a skin cream from CVS drugstore, you could go to CVS's website and see if they have a Prop 65 warning label, especially if you use a VPN to make it look like you're coming from California. If they have a Prop 65 in their product detail page, then you have to have a Prop 65 on Amazon. And you've saved yourself from having to do the testing, because their Prop 65 is going to tell you what chemicals are prohibited. So you're just going to copy it into Amazon and take advantage of what's already been done. So I think we beat that one a little bit. So continuing to beat down, it's know what you're manufacturing. Paul helped make the slide. He says, don't waste money on a product that you can't sell because it doesn't comply with US law. So I was at Paul's house a couple weeks ago, and he was showing me this collection of products in his basement, where he had a private label seller that was one of his first clients on Amazon. And the seller was selling these really cool ice ball creation kits, where you would freeze the ice ball, or you put water in it and then freeze it, and it would come out with a whiskey ice ball. And so Paul has about 100 of them in his basement, because the seller imported them, started selling them on Amazon, and then the person who has the patent for ice balls came after him and basically said, you have to stop selling this product. And so since you can't, if you can't sell it on Amazon, you can't flip it to eBay either. You have to stop selling it totally. So what happened is the seller gave Paul 100 of these to give out as gag gifts. So they just so they do it. So here's Paul's best practicing tips. Best practices: make sure you know what the legal requirements are for your product in the U.S. If it's for instance, if it's a child car seat, I helped a seller. I think last year I helped him. He was selling a private label car seat for children, or it wasn't a car seat. It was a private label car seat, like accessory, to make it easier to use a car seat. And so he didn't realize that because it was an accessory for a DOT certified car seat, he had to do all the certifications with the DOT. So we helped him go through and navigate, because his manufacturer in China merely told him good to sell, good to sell. And so he took that and assumed that it must be good to sell. And what really was the case is that he actually needed all this. Not only did he need the child safety, the CISPA certifications, but he needed DOT certifications too. So we had to help him. I went to a lab and got all those tests done. So that was it had a happy ending. His product now is one of the best sellers on Amazon, but there was a short period of time there that there was a lot of compliance catch up.
I think that there's a comment there from Fiona saying, yeah, and she's right. This can be quite off-putting seeing all these potential barriers. But I think the silver lining there is that if you understand them and you do them properly, it creates a barrier to other people competing against you. So the example you gave is a perfect example there. That he didn't realize that he had to do these things, but when he realized and did them, he then has a more defensible position because anybody else coming in also has to go through those same hurdles. So
Absolutely.
it can help you. They're not just things to be scared of.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of these safety testings. It sounds off-putting. It sounds like it's a lot of work, but they're not. The same time that you could be designing your listing and having your images being done and having all the lifestyle imagery taken, you could have one of your products being evaluated by a certified lab, so that and you're paying the standard priority or low priority rates, so you're not paying for priority service, and so by the time you go live on Amazon, you've got all your safety documentation, what your risks are, and it's also just building that whole bundle, because the difference between being suspended on Amazon for a safety violation for 12 hours and being suspended on Amazon for a safety violation for 3 weeks often comes down to testing. Amazon doesn't want to keep people suspended. So you have a huge advantage over your competitors too in that regards, because sometimes Amazon will go through and they'll clean up a category and say, everybody needs to provide us with this documentation to keep selling. And if you did your homework on the front end, you just merely upload the document and you're good to go. You just you're reactivated in a couple hours and selling again. So it's going to be huge. One thing to watch out for too, in the United States, you're liable, and I'd have a slide about strict product liability, but you're liable if somebody gets hurt, sick, or worse, death. Indemnity clauses in contracts with manufacturers in China, totally worthless. You can have the best contract with a manufacturer in China, and you're never going to collect on it. So it doesn't really matter all that much to have it, because what good is it? It's you want to work with reputable manufacturers, talk with professionals in the space, talk with the testing companies. If you want to if you were going to sell a product, you need to you probably want to have quality control checks being done at your manufacturer. The good thing about working with these different inspection companies in Asia is that they're going to know who is reputable and who's not. So if you start a relationship with them, I would always recommend to sellers, find your own inspection company. Don't go with who the manufacturer tells you is a good inspection company, because that's there's going to be an inherent conflict of interest if you go to your manufacturer and they say, oh yeah, my buddy Jim handles all these inspections. So you want to have somebody that's on your team, not a shared solution or somebody that's not on your team at all. And then lastly, when it comes to laws, just remember, manufacturer. When I was walking around in China and I saw these blender bottles for fun, I started talking to them. I was like, so tell me, can I sell this in the US? Oh, absolutely. Minimum order quantity 100, and then it's MOQ 100. And then I say, well, what about trademarks, patents, and copyrights? Oh, well, we've got all those. We've got the patent, we've got the trademark, we've got the copyright. And I knew it was false, because I'd already talked to Blender Bottle's legal team beforehand about all this. So it's like, it was just humorous to see it, that it's not, so people will tell you stuff that they want to make a sale, not what's in your best interest sometimes.
There's a question from Erin saying, in children's fashion, competition is high and design and colors move quickly. Does she need to get every time she makes a new design, does she have to get a new lab test on fabric and material and colors and dyes, or is there a way to? Do you know if there's a way to kind of do that once and then have that apply to multiple different products?
So it. I was trying to find it because I'm kind of a visual person. We're designing colors.
Separate questions to have.
Yeah, it's a great question. That's where you're going to want to talk to one of these lab testing companies, preferably one in the United States, so that they can give you the proper answer on because they're going to be more in tune with the regulations in your category and in your space because they're dealing with it on a daily basis. So they're going to know the specifics of that type of question. But my gut instinct would tell me that you probably would want to, if you can afford it, get a test on each one, just so that way you can protect yourself.
The little bit I know about testing is that it depends on the source batches, and if for example you have a single collection of dyes or yarns or whatever that the manufacturer is going to use to make all of your products, then you probably can get that tested once, because the same source material, raw material, is going to be used in the different products. But talk to a professional and get the answer from them. But yeah, that's all I can think of how you could save doing it every time.
One of my clients is a private label seller that sells jewelry, and they had to get testing done recently, and it was interesting because they had like 30 ASINs because of the variations. Because there's a small, there's a medium, there's a large, there's a red, there's a blue, there's a green, all that sort of stuff. And so it was actually cheaper for them to send in one of every single one and have it tested than to worry about it, because the manufacturer basically was like, well, we're just going to put these all on not the manufacturer, the lab test company was like, we're just going to put these all on the table and just be like dropping, testing stuff on all of them in one line. So the cost differential, for one test, it was maybe 500. For 30 tests, it was like 750. It wasn't a huge difference in price. So that's also something to think about.
Next slide.
Next slide. Yeah. All right. So strict product liability law. I'm not familiar with the UK product liability regime, but I imagine it's not as awful as our United States one that we've got. So United States, we have strict product liability. So what that means is that manufacturers, retailers, distributors, and anybody in the supply chain is strictly liable for the products that they sell. So when somebody has a lawsuit for, like, say you sell like this bottle of Dr. Pepper here, if it somehow had, if it was defective in some way, I could sue Dr. Pepper, I could sue Ralph's grocery store, I could sue the trucking company. Everybody that ever touched this bottle could be sued, because that's how product liability works in the US. And that's why some of these cases can have such extreme settlements. What strict product liability means from a legal standpoint is really quite interesting. It means that consumers don't have to prove why they were harmed. They only have to prove that they were harmed. So if I drink this Dr. Pepper and I somehow come down with coronavirus, I don't have to and I can say that I can show a decent link that the coronavirus came from Dr. Pepper, the Dr. Pepper consumption. I don't have to prove why. Like, I don't have to say, well, somebody at the factory must have coughed into it. Like, that's not required. I just have to prove that I drank the Dr. Pepper and I got hurt. And now everybody that ever touched this bottle of Dr. Pepper gets hurt. So there's three major categories of strict liability in the US. There's failure to warn, which means you didn't put adequate warning labels on your product, or let people know that it could cause harm. So failure to warn. Unsafe design. So that means that you designed your product in a way that was less safe than an alternate design, and so that less safe choice for the product design caused somebody to get hurt. And then there's defective manufacturing. So most people think that they worry about that last category, that defective manufacturer. They think, like, you think about like a chainsaw and somebody forgetting to put a link in the chainsaw so that when you turn it on, it explodes and cuts somebody's arm off. They think of that like that's your biggest risk. But actually what's interesting is the biggest risk is failure to warn, because those cases happen all the time. So one thing that's really interesting is that if you look at a BMW that's spec'd out for US distribution, and a BMW that's spec'd out for UK distribution, you really get to see the differences firsthand. So on the UK models, you can push a button and make the trunk open, and you can push a button on the remote and make the trunk close. In the US models, when you push the button to make the trunk open, it like flashes its lights, it beeps a little bit, and then it goes up. But to close the trunk, you have to actually walk up to the trunk and push a button on the trunk, and then it's going to flash a little bit and beep a little bit, and then the trunk's going to close. So that it demonstrates the difference of how product liability works, because that's BMW making sure that they're not going to be sued with an unsafe design or failure to warn claim, because they, and there's also a big sticker for, especially the ones sold in California, that on the BMW on the trunk that says, warning, pushing this button could cause injury or death if you don't move away from it, which seems so obvious that, that you have to move away from the trunk when it's closing. Similarly, when you buy a brand new car of any brand in California, there's a sticker that is about 8.5 by 11 that's placed on the driver's window that says, warning, operating this motor vehicle can cause injury or death. And then it has a Prop 65 warning for every single chemical in it. And then it's got all these other warnings about, injury and death that can happen from drinking and driving. It's like everything comes full circle. And when you buy a car in California, it's kind of interesting. So that's where, so failure to warn means that if you're selling a product, I was actually working with a private label seller last week who had a safety issue where he had warnings, but you had to go to a website to register for a owner's manual, and then the warnings were all in the owner's manual. And Amazon, and he's lucky, Amazon's the one that called him out on that. And so so they're saying, no, if you have warnings that need to be included, you need to actually put those in the box. Like they need to be on the box or in the box with the product, because you can't, you have to assume that somebody's going to buy it on Amazon for their 80-year-old grandmother and give it to them. And then the grandmother is going to use it. And they were actually really, as much as they were angry about Amazon suspending their product, they were extremely lucky that they didn't find out about this from a lawyer, because a troll lawyer would have absolutely had a field day with that case, because they would be able to prove malicious intent, because not only did they know that there was a warning requirement, but they had warnings on their website, but they consciously did not put them with the product. So it's so it's something to think about. Warnings on the front end, it's just like Prop 65. It's really cheap. It's just a cost of doing business. Put a sheet in there. If you're selling a product that can cause injury, if it's misused, just let people know. It's not a hard thing to do. And then defective,
having the thought process to think about the different warnings you may have to put on something. I think I don't know other people, but to me in the UK, you just kind of assume you've got some liability in yourself as the consumer, and it's hard to turn it around as a product designer and think about all the different possibilities that you may have to mention.
Well, if somebody wants to throw out an example of a product, we can walk through an example of what kind of warnings are required, and then talk about the ways that you could have an unsafe design and a defective manufacturing if we want to make it interactive.
If anyone wants to throw one out, we can do that. We can press on with the slides. So we go on and we'll come back if someone gives us a product.
Looks like Keith is typing, so let's see.
No pressure, Keith. Different question.
Different question. Oh, okay.
Selling the USA without any tax communication with the authorities. Any paperwork and the communication satisfied by the US. Oh, sorry, Amazon.
So that one. So again, I work with Paul, and the beauty of working with Paul Rafelson is that we get to focus on our silos of what we like to work on. So tax is not one of those things. So that's definitely a Paul question that I'd recommend taking to Paul, just because it's this consequence of selling without any communication with the authorities. I know that if you have a U.S. company and you don't communicate with the authorities, the penalty can be like $10,000 to $20,000. But if you're just doing communication to satisfy Amazon US, that's a Paul question. I don't want to give any wrong information there. So okay, let's take the plastic rat trap. That one sounds fun. So I'm assuming that this is going to be one of those rat traps where it's got like the little spring thing, like I'm envisioning a mouse trap that's got the spring.
Plastic box that the door closes and traps the rat inside.
Oh, okay, that one. Oh, okay, a little box of the trap. Okay, so you go in and traps the rat inside. Ooh, that one's
You got
That would
plastics
probably,
for that, so you got Prop 65 plastics, right?
yeah, Prop 65 for plastics for sure. I'm trying to think what would you have to warn about with that one. You probably need to warn. You probably would want to have a warning that rat that rats could carry rabies and that they could be disease vectors, so that you want to discard of rats properly. That you want to have a humane way of dealing with it, so that you don't of dealing with the rats, so that you don't have like a animal abuse thing. So you need to have some sort of warning label that talks about animal abuse and making sure that you humanely dispose of animals. If you're putting any sort of poison inside of it, then you'd want to have a warning regarding not only the chemicals in the poison, but that it could cause injury and death. You probably want to also have a warning that says that this product does not guarantee that a rat won't find a way out, so that way you're not liable for the damage that would happen to their house if the rat gets out and starts chewing through cupboards and stuff.
Yep.
So
the EPA pesticide thing as well, so you've got to deal with all of that, and probably have a US-based company too.
Correct. Yeah, probably need a US-based company, and you need to take the EPA training course. Now moving on from failure to warn, we'll go to unsafe design. So what that's gonna look like is that if you're selling, if you've got a rat box, is that if you have a design where a rat can merely chew its way out of it, then someone's going to make a claim that you had an unsafe design, because if you would have changed the design to the alternative design that a rat could not chew through, and they can demonstrate that you reasonably could have figured out that alternate design, then they have a claim for unsafe design. And then the defective manufacturing, that one of course would be easy. It's like, oh, you forget to put one of the hinges on the door so the rat gets out and gets loose. So that's easy. That's an easier one. But defective manufacturing can happen a whole lot of ways. You could have, even recently we were working on a product recall for someone where the manufacturer just started having quality fade, and then what ended up happening is someone got hurt, and now the CPSC is recalling 20,000 units of the product. So
just on a side note, Amazon, from an Amazon perspective, what I always recommend is every batch you have made, you give a different SKU and a different FinSKU to it. So if there is a recall, you can recall just an individual manufacturing batch from FBA, and that keeps your production batches separate within the warehousing system. So if using FBA, use different FinSKUs for every produced batch. They're all linked to the same ASIN, so using a single listing, single set of reviews and everything, but just different FinSKUs mean that they, from a logistics perspective, they're kept separate.
Smart. That's really good. That's a good point. Good tip. So I think we've caused injury and death to this product liability slide. So we can we could probably move on. So a quick word about North America. So obviously we were talking a lot about the United States, but I just wanted to expand a little bit into North America, because obviously, even though there's a lot of people in this country that don't believe that Canada and Mexico exist, they do. And Amazon sellers, most likely, if you're selling in the U.S., you probably are signed up for NARF, which is the North American Retail Fulfillment Program, and so you want to watch out for some of the pitfalls there. So here's something interesting to talk about. Marijuana is still illegal at the federal level here in the United States. So you want to be really careful with selling marijuana, THC, or CBD related products. Amazon prohibits the sale of cannabinoids and THC on its platform in every marketplace in North America. So if you have a product that has CBD, for instance, there's a lot of buzzwords you have to watch out for. For instance, full spectrum will get your listing banned from Amazon in all 3 marketplaces within minutes. Other things to watch out for with CBD, you need to get it tested very often. So you need to get it tested before you list it, and you need to get it tested routinely by a lab. And this is because manufacturers will tell you that their CBD is THC free, but if you test it, you might actually find that it's got THC in it, and even trace amounts of THC make that product illegal to sell in the United States and Canada. And I'm pretty sure THC is banned in Mexico too, but I know by Amazon policy it is. So if Amazon suspends your product pending a THC test, which they routinely do in these categories, your product will be down until you have that lab test that's dated within a recent time period to show that your products are safe. So you definitely, CBD is one area that I tell people be very, very careful, because it's like I went to the White Label Expo, which is where I met you, Christian,
Yep.
and CBD was all the rage there. All these people were selling CBD, and it's in the U.S. You just have to be really careful with that. Now, what I was talking about with NARF, North American Retail Fulfillment, is that with NARF, it actually extends your Amazon listings, just like in the EU27 program, where it extends it to all the, or what is it, EU28 now or something. It extends it to all the different marketplaces. Well, in the U.S., we've got NARF, which means that if you list something in the U.S., it'll extend it to Canada and Mexico, often without anything on your any action on your part. So you might so this really you got to watch out for this if you're in the health or supplement categories, because a lot of products that are legal in the United States and totally fine are prescription only by designation by Health Canada. So we have a lot of sellers that will get hit with restricted products violations for products that they didn't even list in Canada, that just got cross-listed through the NARF program, and then now their Canada account is under 72-hour notice or being suspended. So you just want to watch out. I tell people, if you're I think NARF is fantastic because it's a way to increase your sales and make a lot of money, but you just need to check the NARF page once a week, especially if you're in any sort of arbitrage selling, or like health or personal care or supplements. You just got to check your NARF settings page about once a week and just make sure that things that are cross-posting into other marketplaces are legal to sell there, because Amazon expects you to be doing that. So it's just important to do it. So and then make sure, like I said before, make sure you have the proper safety documentation before you need it. Just because something is approved by DOT and meets DOT in the United States is Department of Transportation. So anything automotive has to have a DOT certification. So, for instance, in the United States, you'd need DOT certification. In Canada, you'd need their equivalent certification, which is, I believe, Transport Canada, so TC. So if you're selling a product that's legal in the U.S., it's interesting because obviously we can drive into Canada and Mexico very easily. You just drive across the border, you show a driver's license, enhanced driver's license. It's really not a big deal for us. When I was living in New York, we went to Canada all the time just for fun because it was a nice little getaway. But the major distinction is that you can go to Canada from the United States and visit, and all of your stuff, like if I take my car and it's legal to drive all season tires in New York, or all weather tires in New York, in Canada, it's legal if you're there for under a certain threshold to drive all weather tires. However, in the wintertime, if you are there for longer than the duration, which I think is 72 hours, you're expected to have snow tires in Canada. So that's something to think about, so the same exception applies for products that are being sold. Something that's legal to take temporarily into Canada might not be legal to take for long term into Canada. And of course, if you're selling into Canada, you're expected to comply with that long term category. So, just watch out for it, because some things that people don't often know about, but gets a lot of sellers, chlorhexidine, any of the azoles. So these are shampoos and cosmetics. So anything that has chlorhexidine, or if the chemical ends in AZOLE, azoles, those ones are typically prescription only in Canada. And I know we have some beauty care sellers in this group, so just want to watch out for that. And then watch out for child safety rules, because lead testing is required for child safety products, and CISPA certifications are required for safety products. So you really want to make sure you comply with the child safety stuff. Those ones are like prime candidates for these malicious lawyers to troll around on, because it's really easy to build a case with a jury about how this could be your son or your grandchild that was playing with this toxic toy, and then your checkbook just opens up. So you want to watch out for the child safety rules, really, for sure. I know I see some questions over here. Let's see, do you have any tips with regards to supplements that we should be aware of? Well, I just kind of answered some of them, but really check out Health Canada. They've got a really good resource on what's prohibited. So if you go to Health Canada, type that in. I think it's healthcanada.ca if I'm not mistaken, but if it's not, I could be wrong about that. But check out Health Canada because they have a really good resource on what's considered prescription in Canada, and you just would want to check that list and make sure that when you're looking at your ingredient list for supplements, that you just check. It's a perfect task for a VA. Literally, just have them take every single ingredient in your supplement and plug it into Health Canada. And if you don't have any matches by the time you're done, then you're most likely good. And if you have a match, then you want to watch out for it.
Is there an equivalent in America that you can go to and search ingredients and see what needs to be considered?
In the US
In the
or
US,
Canada?
yeah. In the US.
In the US? Yeah, so the FDA, they've got a really great resource, the FDA. And then Amazon uses a company called 𝗺𝗃𝗃 to scan all their listings now in a lot of categories for banned substances. So for a while, 𝗺𝗃𝗃 actually had a list up of what they were scanning for. I don't know if they still have that list anymore, but they used to have a list that you could publicly search to see whether it was a prohibited chemical and if you'd be subject to the issues.
Okay.
So that's it for this slide. Let's see. All right, so here's some of the 𝗳𝑐ha regulations just to make sure that y'all are aware of in the United States to think about. So the Americans with Disabilities Act is the ADA. That one covers public accommodations and making sure that products are accessible to people who have disabilities. What that means is the public accommodations is really interesting, though, because courts last year started saying that websites constitute a place of public accommodation. So if you're running a Shopify store, then you need to have an ADA compliant website, which means, like there's third-party tools that you can buy that will actually fix your website and make it ADA compliant. We use one for the law firm. It's called 𝗱𝐸, and we pay $49 a month, and they automatically, whenever we update our website, they make it accessible again within a couple days. So ADA is something to watch out for. Californians with Disabilities Act, CDA. Again, California takes the lead of establishing really strict penalties for web non-compliance. And so some of the law firms that used to be Prop 65 trolls, like Pacific Trial Lawyers out of San Diego, they decided that there was too much work and hassle in buying products and testing them. So that lawyer, he now found a blind kid that's in college and literally just uses his name to rubber stamp California's with Disability Act lawsuits against companies for having non-compliant Shopify stores. So really a stand-up guy down there in San Diego with what he's up to, really fighting for people's rights. I've never met a college kid who makes six figures a year by suing people, but I guess it's whatever, So that's interesting. Harking back to our favorite state again, California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. Any business that has more than 50,000 consumer records is expected to comply with CCPA standards. Now, if you're only selling on Amazon, the good thing is that Amazon takes care of that for you, so you don't have to worry about anything. If you have a Shopify store and you sell on Amazon, you do have to, now you've got to be concerned. So CCPA is actually really easy. 50,000 records sounds like a lot, but it's really not. The average, if you think about it, like the average, if you sell a product that is, if you do, 7 figures a year, you do $1 million a year in sales, and you sell your product for $20 per unit, you're easily doing 50,000 sales in a year. You've got 50,000 records. You now hit that records thing, because a record could be a order summary, it could be a customer. The record is broadly defined. So what that means, what your requirements for CCPA is that you have to have a California Consumer Privacy Notice for California residents. So it's actually a separate page. I should say that CCPA is the California equivalent to GDPR. So anyone that understands GDPR understands CCPA pretty easily. you have to have a way for people to opt out, and you have to provide notice. That's just another one. And then in the UK, y'all have the Modern Slavery Act. California has its own Supply Chain Integrity Act equivalent. So they expect that you're going to be checking, if you're selling a product in California, you're supposed to make sure that there's no modern slavery that went into making the product. So you just want to watch out for that. Again, that's where if you have a testing company that's working for you, most testing companies are checking for humane working conditions. And if you've got that test report that says that there's no, that you're fine, then you're all good to go. And then the last gotcha federal regulation in the United States that we bring up that's interesting is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It was our FCPA was modeled after the UK's version. So the UK has one as well. What that says is that if you are doing business trans-border, that you can't bribe a foreign official. So what you have to be careful with is, I've heard a lot of clients sometimes talk to me and they're like, oh yeah, I just give my manufacturer or the customs guy a red packet, I think is what it's called in China, which is like I guess, like a gift for moving you up to the front of the line. You just got to be very careful because a lot of manufacturers could be like Communist Party officials in China. Similarly, if you're giving a red packet to a customs person, they definitely work for the government of China. So you have to be really careful that you're not inadvertently violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, because that one applies worldwide, and they can hit you in the U.S. with a violation, and then I'm sure whoever's in charge at of enforcing in the UK would also probably join in on that. So you just want to watch out for that one. Let's see what else we have. I think we're
3 slides left. I know we're running a bit over.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's
so
good stuff.
Yeah. So suspension prevention tips. So one thing you want to set records globally, Tom. That's a one to watch out for. You want to have perfect records that are readily accessible for every item that you sell. So what that records means is like invoices. So whenever you buy your products, make sure you're saving those invoices, make sure they're commercial invoices, because at any given time, Amazon can do an authenticity check or have some sort of claim where they want invoices. There's no such thing as a generic listing on Amazon anymore. So you need to make sure you're listing the proper brand. Most of y'all are building private label brands, so you would not care about this, but we have a lot of clients that sometimes will mess up and they'll put their product on the wrong brand because they're trying, especially if they're in China, and they'll be like, oh, this is a generic listing because this person stole all the images from Alibaba. Well, that doesn't make it a generic listing just because they stole the images from Alibaba and you're buying the same product from Alibaba. It's still their private label product. So just watch out for that. Don't ignore infringement notices. That things tend to get worse now with Amazon. They are very often sending in 72-hour notices now for not dealing with IP claims in a timely manner. It used to be called unfulfillable inventory. Now it's called refurbishment settings, but you want to turn off refurbishing of unfulfillable inventory under the Amazon settings page, because that leads to a lot of erroneous used sold as new claims. So going into Q4, make sure that that's turned off. Segregate your Amazon returns from new products. Sounds simple. A lot of sellers don't do it. So also don't use Amazon's destroy unfulfillable inventory feature. If you have inventory that's unfulfillable, you want to make sure that that gets returned to somebody that you trust who can throw it in the trash. Because if you use Amazon's destroy unfulfillable inventory feature, they're not actually going to throw it in the trash. They're going to sell it to somebody as a liquidation lot. And that person's going to show up as a hijacker on your private label listing.
Is there any case people have against Amazon, given that Amazon said they would destroy it, not just sell it to some other person?
I think Amazon's argument is that destroy is a loose term. So what is one man's trash is another man's treasure. So Amazon would take, so Amazon will take that approach that,
Yeah.
And then just make sure your sources are good. If you're doing any sort of online arbitrage or selling wholesale merchandise, make sure that the sources are good. Don't do a few test buys to make sure the products aren't counterfeit. For instance, there is a company out of New York that tells you that their website slogan is that we buy pallets of inventory on the fly so that you can get you can get the fantastic deals because we're buying in pallets and you're buying cases. The really interesting thing about that company is that they're buying pallets from China and they're all counterfeit. So they're fantastic deals because it's counterfeit product. So it's it looks real. It's 100% fake. So it's
I guess on the same subject, if somebody has a listing and they get Chinese sellers or somebody else selling on the same listing, is there any recommended path if people are not brand registered, or do they have to be brand registered to have any hope of kicking those other sellers off?
You can now use Amazon's report abuse tool on the Amazon account help dashboard page. So there's now a report there's a report selling policy of use, and so you can report that a seller is selling an item that doesn't match the detail page. The only downside is that those reports are very, very slow for Amazon to review. So they can take quite a while for Amazon to review them, if they ever review them. So that's just the only, and you won't hear anything back because they send you this generic little, we take these allegations seriously, thank you so much, email. So brand registry is still the preferred method to go for that. And then as Paul put this on here, he says, suspensions are not cheap, but it's more costly to go it alone. Amazon keeps track of what you submit. So we've had some sellers, they'll submit one plan of action themselves, and then we look at it and realize that what the seller thought was a problem is not the problem. But now you've established in Amazon's mind that what the seller said was a problem is now a problem that we have to deal with too. So you just want to watch out for that, because it can suspensions. We've had, we've seen sellers who get suspended for weeks and weeks because they did it themselves. We've seen sellers that used us, and we've gotten them reinstated in 20 minutes. It literally can run the gamut of how long. But of course, there's no guarantee. Not every case is going to be the 20-minute case. So let's see what's on the next page. Account reviews. So I just did a presentation about this a couple days ago. You want to be reviewing your account health page at least weekly. So Amazon gave you that account health dashboard. Really crucial to check that out. Make sure you address any policy violations in a timely manner, and be careful when you're addressing IP complaints. We've seen a lot of people getting suspended for their entire account getting suspended because they tried to address an IP complaint and did it wrong. So for instance, we had one seller who was selling Cadbury eggs, nice British brand, and they were selling them retail arbitrage, but they had put them under a listing of a private label company who somehow had stolen all of Cadbury's images and bullet points and titles, and then just put their own brand name there. And so they were reporting any retail arbitrage sellers that listed there as counterfeits. What happened is, we told the seller, we don't think you should submit this to Amazon. This could be bad. But they were adamant. They're like, no, we want to appeal with Amazon. Amazon should be smart enough to look at this and see that we were selling the same product and that the brand was tampered with. They didn't see it that way. They saw it that it was selling counterfeits and that we were trying to manipulate Amazon's employees. And so they suspended the account for about a day while they investigated this and then reversed course. So just be careful with those. And I think that's it. I think we're at the end. I think we've got 2 slides left. The little pitchy slide of what we offer with our new Seller Basics program, and then the next one, the next slide is how to get in touch with us. But we did launch back in a program called Seller Basics. I encourage everyone to check it out because it's it gives you unlimited complimentary consultations with lawyers on any of these topics that we talked about today. So if you've got a question, we're here to answer it. And if you're a Seller Basics member, it doesn't cost you anything for that answer. So it's great for P65 compliance and everything else.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. Sorry that this took so long. Didn't realize how long this presentation would take.
Appreciate every minute of your time. I think everyone's questions as well. Just checking for other things. I think we've answered everyone's question. If anyone else has anything else quickly, we can have a quick look. Otherwise, we're done.
Hey, Tony, make sure you put a www in front of it. It's supposed to reroute to the www, but that might be what's causing it.
It should work. It works for me, Tony.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Gail, let's see. Just back to proxy. How do you decide which warning on the list? We don't have any specific ingredients in our own generic one being. So there is actually some. So you just want to make sure there's. Welcome, guys. So Gail, it's tough to say whether to do a warning there, because there are some weird like rules of Prop 65 that you're not supposed to put a warning if there isn't anything on the list that's banned. So, although there's no trolls out there enforcing that yet. So so obviously I can't tell you advice to do that just because it'd be, it could get you in trouble. A child crayon is CE certified for the EU. Can the same lab test be used for CE to apply for ASTM in the US? There are certain standards in the US that have to be certified, although the CE is much harder to get than most US certifications. So what we would want to do is just, talk with your lab testing company, because, like, for instance, we had one testing company that we worked with who did have CE certifications, and they were able to use those CE to generate UL certifications for just a nominal fee. So you have to talk to the lab and see if it can be done.
So we may have to get a lab to come in for a future presentation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's I think there's a lot to learn. People don't think about the labs, but they can be your best ally, because they're really a preventative step.
Yes. Okay, well, everyone, thank you very much for attending. I will send out a copy of the slides probably tomorrow. And then the full replay of this will also be available just after it processes, which usually takes about 15-20 minutes. So you can watch again at your leisure.
Awesome.
And
well, you're welcome, guys.
Jeff, for joining us today.
All right, thank you. And when you have the lab speak, I'd love to just watch. So let me know. So that way
We'll let you know.
Or if you want me to be a
a
silent panelist, I'm happy to be a silent panelist too. If you want to let them take the lead and then throw questions my way, I'm happy to help.
All good. Okay, well, fantastic. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, Jeff, and everyone else enjoy your evenings. Whatever time of day it is where you are. And we hope
Alrighty, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, bye.